Oh, we're having fun, right? Summer is in full swing. Everyone's soaking up the sun, especially now in the heat wave. But are you using enough sunscreen or even the right kind? Well, Lauren Karpinski is here, Dr. Lauren Karpinski from Apex Skin. And I want to know a little bit about this sunscreen thing. Like, are we doing the right thing? Are we getting the right amount? Are we missing out on vitamin D? What's the story?
So most people don't put enough sunscreen on to begin with.
To begin with?
To begin with. So a lot of people ask me, I use sunscreen, why am I still getting burned? Most people should be using almost an entire shot glass worth or 2 full tablespoons. That's the equivalent of an ounce. So you can imagine if you have a 8-ounce bottle of sunscreen, that should really only last you 8 applications if you're putting it on your entire body for a trip to the beach.
So it makes me think about it. Like, we're going to use a whole ounce. There's only 8 days worth in each bottle. Are the more expensive ones better than the medium priced ones? I mean, how do you go about doing it? Because it gets to be, it's sort of expensive, right?
It is expensive. First of all, 1 bottle wouldn't, well, let's see, 8 days doesn't really add up. So you should be reapplying every 2 or 3 hours.
Look at that.
More often if you're swimming or sweating with sports outside, things like that. Most of the big name brands of sunscreen that say broad spectrum are all pretty equivalent. So almost any big name brand that you'd see at the drugstore would be acceptable.
What brand would you use or do you use?
If I'm allowed to say.
You're allowed.
I prefer Neutrogena, but Aveeno has great products, Banana Boat, Coppertone. You really want to stick for SPF 50 plus if you're going to be outside for an extended period of time, so that includes things like golfing.
So if you sweat when you're playing a sport or something like that, it's going to come off you.
That's correct. So even if it says sport sunscreen or long-lasting sunscreen, those products are formulated to last longer, yes, but you still need to be reapplying at least every couple hours.
So I'm reading the jar. I'm looking at UVA and there's UVB. What's the difference between these things?
So sunlight has all kinds of different wavelengths. Those are the ultraviolet rays.
Oh, look at this.
So UVB.
Oh, I'm the guy on the left. I'm taking a beating.
UVB tends to be the more damaging type of rays that we relate to skin cancer and aging, things like that. But UVA is much more common. It's more prevalent in the sun's rays. So you do want to make sure that you're covering for both of those. And that's what the broad spectrum sunscreen means.
Boy, we're learning a lot right here. So they always say like almost anything you overdo might not be good for you. Are there any drawbacks to using these sunscreens and these chemicals and stuff on your body?
So some people are concerned that using sunscreen can reduce your vitamin D levels.
Right.
Probably the biggest.
That's the vitamin you get from the sun.
That's correct.
So they're bouncing it off of us, we're not getting it.
Exactly. So the biggest concern with vitamin D levels is probably living in Ohio. Having a darker complexion, being female, there's all kinds of reasons to have low vitamin D levels. But research has shown that whether you use sunscreen or not, most people fall generally within the normal range, and there isn't a huge difference between people who use sunscreen and those who don't. The other great thing is we have vitamins and good diets that we can use to replace vitamin D.
Okay, so do you have any good, I always love those pictures of what happens when you don't wear sunscreen. Do you bring any of those pictures today?
I didn't bring any pictures today.
Because I know you get up in the morning, you look in the mirror, you put on the sunscreen, you go, oh, what's this, what's that, what's this? Are there any ways you can identify like you're starting to have a problem from not using enough sunscreen?
So we can see the dark brown spots. They can be flat, they can be raised. If you ever see a brown spot that you think is changing color, changing shape or size, or bleeding, that would be unusual.
That bleeding part didn't sound good.
The bleeding part's never good.
No, it didn't sound good.
You should go see your dermatologist. But in addition to that, lots of exposure to sunlight can cause fine lines and wrinkles. You can have precancerous spots called actinic keratoses. Those usually look like little sandy red spots that feel rough and don't go away.
Oh yeah.
And those can be treated by your dermatologist also.
Yeah, and the other thing people forget about the top of your head, because I mean you're taking all the sun up there, and sun does get through there, doesn't it? Because you can see scalp once in a while.
Oh, absolutely. Even in the ladies, most of us part our hair. If you have thinner hair or lighter hair, the sun can get through there as well. So you want to wear a hat if your hair is thick enough that it's hard to get sunscreen up there, or just use a thinner formulation to kind of rub it right onto the scalp, because those are the spots we forget about.
I just did a beer segment, and they told me you could drink 2 or 3 beers a day. How many bottles of sunscreen do I have to buy a week?
Depends on how much time you're spending at the beach.
There you go. So it's all about that. But you say 1 ounce, that's a shot glass per application.
Yes.
And it's an application, how many so how many hours every 2 hours?
Every 2 to 3 hours.
Okay, so there you go. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Apex Skin. Natalie?